Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Okay, great. So I'm Matthew McAllister. I'm the Director of Marketing at CB4. Before we get started, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out on this freezing cold and very early Monday morning. We really appreciate it. So today we'll be talking about practical applications of artificial intelligence in retail. We'll discuss the foundation of artificial intelligence, what it means, and how it works. This part of the conversation will be hosted by Dr. Irad and Joe, visiting professor at Stanford University, head of the AI lab at Tel Aviv University, and co-founder and active chairman of CB4. Next, we'll discuss real-world applications of AI and how theory is put into practice to increase same-store growth. This part of the talk will feature Joe Gauthier, Director of Operations at Wesco, which is a 53-chain store of C-stores based in Michigan, and also a client of CB4. After they both speak, we'll have about 15 minutes left for questions from the audience. So thank you so much, and after the show, please come and visit us in booth 2346. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. So it's exciting to talk about AI in the morning. It's really a huge audience. And I will be talking about AI. Wow. Do you hear me well, guys? Okay. And specifically about AI in the retail world. And then we'll move to a real-world example that most of it will be presented by Joe. And we'll leave some room for questions. So part of the reason that there are so many people here is this storm of buzzwords that we hear more and more around us. Machine learning, deep learning, artificial intelligence, and as often happens with buzzwords, they are overused, over-marketed sometimes. And what I'll try to do in a really short time that we have is to clarify some of those terms. And I'll start with the taxonomy, just to understand the different terms. So first, artificial intelligence, and you'll see AI. AI means artificial intelligence, was proposed in the early 50s of the last centuries. And actually, it represents a wide variety of methods, techniques, and tools that mimics some cognitive function that we usually associate with the human mind. Things like learning, problem solving, planning, recommending, and so on. Now, there are many families of tools there, but two distinctive families are what we call expert systems, or knowledge-based system, and machine learning. They are both two branches of AI. Now, in expert system, huge amount of human expert knowledge is uploaded into the computer memory, and the learning is based on programmed rules, reasoning programs. So, for example, if-then rules. So if we go to the retail space and we talk about your assortment, it might happen that an expert would tell you that if you present certain shampoo in your planogram, close to it you need also to show a certain conditioner. So this is a very helpful rule, and many of these systems still work around us. The problem is that first, it is based on expert, but experts are human, and in many cases, it's very hard for humans to see hidden patterns in the data. And second, often it doesn't take the advantage of using all this information that surrounds us. And this type of family, the machine learning family, the learning there is actually done by the computer themselves and not by experts. And in many cases, the common ground is that the computers try to find interesting patterns in the data and map them into actionable recommendation. Now, there are two different type of families, and again, I'm oversimplifying in this short time, of ways to learn, to give the computer the chance to learn those patterns. One of them is called supervised learning. The other one is unsupervised learning. In supervised learning, the sample data is tagged. So you can actually map the input to a very desirable output. I'll give you an example, customers that might churn. So you might have a list of customers, of different features of customers, and eventually you know if they churned or not. So the computer will use this information and try to find all the patterns that are shared by those clients that churned. And based on those patterns, hopefully you can actually predict those customers that have high probability to churn and prevent it. And this is the supervised learning world. Now, within the supervised learning, there is a very unique group of models called neural networks that's now evolved to what we call deep learning or deep networks. And they got their name since the model is based on layers of networks, of nodes, that are connected by weighted edges. So just think about layers of nodes that are connected by edges. And once you give those sample data that are tagged, and you have the input to the input layer, and you have the output at the output layer, those weights are gradually changing, and they can represent a very complex function. And as you have more and more layers, those networks can represent increasingly a complicated function. And they can be used extremely well to find certain cases when you have enough data and the problem is continuous. So for example, Google is using them to identify different features in image processing. So imagine that you have 3 million pictures of dogs in different areas and different settings, and you represent it to those deep networks. They will be able to recognize easily those dogs and so on. And they got extremely popular because companies like Google and Apple and Amazon are using them for, mostly for image recognition and speech recognition and so on. But the problem with those models are a few. First, the learning is very slow. You need a very strong computer to overcome this slow learning. And they are sort of a black box. It's very hard to get insights back from those models why they decided that the customer will churn. And in the retail world, some of the problems are really problems that we look for insights for the people to understand in this complex dynamics what will be the key feature that can help, for example, increase the sales. And this is exactly what I want to focus in the last family of unsupervised learning. In unsupervised learning, you provide a set of a large data set, sometimes several data sets, and without having any tagged data, you let the computer find interesting patterns, and in many cases find some anomalies that can be mapped into opportunities. And this is a very complex function, but works heavily in many, many applications that I will describe next. But before I go to the application, I will just mention that if I want to recap what we are looking when we talk about requirement in many, many retail applications, we are looking for these 4 different features. One, in many cases, we look for a descriptive and a prescriptive model. So something that we can act upon and something that will provide us the relevant insights to operate in this dynamic environment that includes many products, different environments, online, offline, and of course, the customers. Now, the second thing is about automation. In this complex environment, you cannot allow yourself to give the data for a human analysis for a very long time. You need some tools that can operate fairly quickly and provide those insights, specifically when we are talking about mid-market retailers. The large retailers have a very large team of sophisticated data scientists and tools, but mid-sized retailers are lacking of those. The third requirement is a quick ROI. We are talking about a huge industry where the margin is extremely slim. So you need a project that will provide a very quick ROI in few months. You cannot wait for the next or the third year. It simply doesn't work in this environment. And finally, what we call Googleization. So Googleization means that it has to be very simple, very clear. Sometimes you need to hide those patterns and just provide those recommendations to store managers, merchandising managers, category managers, so things they can act upon very easily. Now, there are many applications there, and they are constantly growing. Some of them in the marketing area. So, for example, how to design your foot traffic in the store and what will be the effective way to for different displays. We have operational analytics, how you find inefficiencies in your locations. And this is exactly a case I will discuss later. How you do a smarter staffing. Everything that is related to customer analytics. Finding the customer life values. Identifying those customers that might churn. Providing an environment between the online and the offline where the customer feel comfortable to move from one side to the other. And of course, merchandising analytics, everything that is related to your product and to this real estate problem which is how do I best select for that specific location the best set of product. So of course, we don't have time to discuss all of them, and I want to describe a very specific example that we tackle at CB4, which is maybe the most relevant question for any retailer. How can I sell more of the product that I'm holding now? How can I sell more means that how can I find all those cases where products are not reaching their full potential? And when you think about this problem, it's actually a very complicated problem. And the reason is that it is related to many, many different areas and different type of data sets. The reason why you are not selling as you should can be related to your planogram. So you need some planogram and assortment data, and SKU data. It can be related to availability, to your supply chain. So you need that piece of data. It can be related to local competitor, either offline and online. So you need a lot of information there. It can be related to demographic, all those customers that surrounds your location. It can be related to pricing, either your pricing, your competitor pricing. It can be related to promotion. So there are so many factors there. And just to get all those pieces of the data, connect them in a timely manner, clean them, and provide the action can be a task that can take years. And I'm talking, based on students that are working now in leading companies in the retail world and are working exactly on this problem. So we realize that it is unrealistic to try and catch all those different data sets and do it in a very actionable way in a very short period of time, as I explained before. And the approach of CB4, of this actually a set of algorithms that were developed in the university, is to use the most simple data set that you can think of, which is the POS data. How much you sell per each product at each location. So it's something that any retailer, even if you have one store, you will have it. It's relatively reliable. And in fact, all those external factors that I was talking before leave their footprints on their POS data. So if you can analyze the POS in a very smart way, you'll be able to squeeze out of it a lot of insights about those external factors. And in many cases, it's enough that you will provide those insights to the people in the organization, and they will be able to find exactly the root cause analysis of those cases where you are not reaching your full potential. And this is exactly what CB4 is doing. We take POS data based on very complex machine learning techniques. We uncover hidden patterns in the data. Hidden patterns means that we find how products are related to each other in different periods of times. It doesn't have to be what we call basket analysis. It doesn't mean that we look at correlation at the receipt level. It is more related to the store environment, how products interact with each other in different environments. And based on those patterns, we can find anomaly. What is an anomaly? Anomaly in this problem is a case where you have a very clear pattern that is shared by enough stores, that is statistically validated, but some of those stores are not fulfilling all the pattern as it should. So you can have a very good benchmark knowing that there is a problem in that store with that specific SKU, since it's part of a very strong pattern that is not realized. And this is exactly what we do. Since we send those inputs to the right person in the organization and we collect back the inputs, we can actually map those cases to very clear root cause analysis. So we can, in the operational opportunity world, we can see if those unrealized demand are related to a product that is not available, or there is a pricing mismatch, or the product is actually in the back storage room and not where it should be, and the promotion tag is not there. So many operational problems that are very relevant, specifically in dynamic environment that happens in the store. And second, we can actually localize the assortment. We can find products that are not part of that store, that if you introduce them to the store, we know that they will have an extremely high probability to sell well. And based on that, what we can do is we can provide same-store growth with usually between 0.9 to 3%. And I think that CB4 is working also with customers with thousands of stores and very large customers. But I think that for us, the most exciting case is to work with medium and small retailers where actually there are no data scientists. You need to be very quick and provide a very quick ROI. And in this case, I want to, without further delay, pass this presentation to Joe, which is a customer of CB4 for, I think, the second year, and represent Wesco, and Joe will tell us more about it.
Now, super. Irad, thank you very much. Okay, so am I coming and going? Yeah. Hello. Okay, we'll use the microphone. Very good. Okay. Again, Irad, thank you for the introduction. Wesco. So who is Wesco? Wesco is a convenience store chain in Western Michigan. We have 53 convenience stores, and with that, we've been around for about 65 years. And we also do have our own distribution center at Wesco. We have a central deli, a central bakery. We have some food service. We have Subway locations, and we also have a fuel division as well. So that's who Wesco is. Again, I'm Joe Gauthier. I'm the Director of Operations for Wesco, and we've been using CB4 now for a couple years, and we're real excited about it. And I want to take a few minutes and kind of share our experience here. So with that, so with CB4, what Wesco did is we got involved in a pilot program, and you can see on the screen here with the pilot program, it really took about a day to really engage in this pilot, which is pretty cool. So what happened is we, as in Wesco, we gave our POS data over to CB4. With that, then CB4 took that information and they generated some recommendations for us. Those recommendations then got pushed back over to Wesco. We then took a look at those recommendations at the store level, and with that, we were able to respond to what was being recommended. We sent the information back over to CB4, and they were able to do a quick ROI analysis for us. And again, what's exciting about that is, again, that process took no more than a day for us, which was pretty engaging and pretty exciting to see something that we could get an ROI on right away rather than have to wait a real long time. Okay, so then we decided to move forward with CB4. So with that was a three-step process, as you can see, with the setup and installation, the training, and then the actual application deployment. So with the setup and installation process, that process took no more than 2 days, and really that was getting information set up with our servers and getting things configured so we could communicate our data set back to CB4. Okay, so then the training process, which really took more the length of time, about 5 days. And again, why did it take 5 days? The reason it took 5 days is we included all the important players from our company. So for example, we had our the owners, the end users get involved in the training process. Then we had our actual district managers, like our field supervisors, get involved in the process. We then went to the stores and had hands-on training with the store managers, so they really understood how this application worked. And we also then engaged our merchandising team. Because again, with the merchandising team, their role in the process is when we find something that we want to add to an assortment, that's where they come into play with the CB4 process. Okay, and then we got ready to actually deploy the application. And when we deployed the application, what we did is we had that downloaded to the back office computer as well as the store manager's mobile device. And we have found over time that the mobile device is definitely the most engaging for the stores, as they really like to take that device with them, walk around the facility, and actually look at the recommendations. Okay, so then this is a kind of a map of how the whole system works. So as Irad pointed out in the bottom left there, you'll see the POS data. So again, as we're ringing up transactions, accumulating that data on an ongoing basis, that information then is then weekly pushed up to the web server at CB4. So now that the information is at the server, the information now can be analyzed, crunched, and then sent back through the web console, and then that information then becomes recommendations. So these recommendations now are weekly recommendations that are going to be sent now to the store to be analyzed. So every Tuesday what happens is our stores know to go to their CB4 application on their handheld, they open it up and they're going to see the various recommendations that have been pushed their way. And again, in our environment, they're seeing anywhere from 4 to 10 recommendations at a time. And what they do then is they open those up and start walking around the facility and taking a look at them. And what's really fun about it is, and I didn't make this up, but the stores did, they've coined the process that they use as a treasure hunt. So for them, they're out there trying to find treasures and make improvements to their store, which helps them increase their merchandise sales, which is pretty cool. So then what happens is also, moving from the store over to merchandise managers, what happens is our merchandise managers on a 2-week basis take a look at all the data and they decide if they want to add certain items to our assortment. So for example, we might have a high moving SKU in 30 out of 53 stores, and it might come up that 6 more stores should have that high moving SKU, so they'll take a look at that and potentially add that SKU into our assortment. So that's worked out real well for us. So now that the stores have analyzed their information, the merchandise managers had added to the assortment, that information then flows back down to CB4 and is tracked, and that's part of the ongoing ROI analysis. So we actually get an ROI analysis from CB4 each month, which is really engaging and shows us how we're moving the ball forward with increasing our merchandise sales. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the actual handheld device. So basically what you're looking at now is this is what the store sees when they get the recommendations. So let's look at on the far left there, let's look at the example that has a little arrow. That is a SKU, a bagel SKU. And what that is, it says AV, and that's an AV standing for availability. Now, if you move down a little bit to the bottom, you'll see where it has the IA. An IA stands for an insert. An insert would be like an item being inserted into our assortment. But moving back up to the top example, that is what the store would see. So they're going to take a look at that first recommendation. They're going to tap on that recommendation, and then it's going to take them to the middle screen. And basically, what the middle screen is, it kind of gives them a direction, a choice on what they should be looking at with that SKU. So now they're going to look at that. They're going to decide what the opportunity is. They're going to then choose that opportunity. They're going to make that adjustment in the store. It could be something that's out of stock. It could be something that's not priced. It could be something that's hidden in those arenas. And what they'll do is they'll make that adjustment. They'll send that recommendation back to CB4. Then CB4 then basically is going to take that information, and that's going to be part of our ROI analysis. So that's how that process works. And again, the stores are spending anywhere to 5 to 10 minutes, no more than that each week when they get the recommendations. So it's kind of nice, again, because it really doesn't bog them down. It's something that they look forward to. It takes just a few minutes, and they submit the findings back to CB4. So here's a couple recent things that have popped up that have came across my desk that were pretty exciting. On the left-hand side, that's a propane tank. So like propane, like we use propane tank for maybe grilling out in our backyards. Anyways, in the Wesco environment, we have a lot of locations that have propane refilling stations. So you bring your tank and we refill it up. Well, those locations didn't have the propane exchange program. Well, what happened is CB4 showed us that those locations would do real well if they had the exchange program as well as the refill program. So what we did is we moved those two stations into not only refilling but also exchange programs, and we saw great lift in our propane sales overall by doing that, which is pretty nifty. The second example is a can of chewing tobacco, and that example is we found in a couple of our stores where the product was behind the counter and it wasn't visible from a consumer perspective. So what we did is we did a little bit of re-merchandising in those locations, and again we were able to track the difference between before and after, how those sales lifted. So again, something simple as a visibility made a real big difference. The last example is that's a dairy example. That's a cow with some milk. Anyways, we have a dairy vendor, and our dairy vendor wasn't doing a good job keeping us in stock. It kept on coming up from the stores that when they did their recommendations for the dairy comments that were coming through, that they were out of stock. They were out of stock. It was real consistent. So what we did is we had our merchandise buyer get with that vendor and sit down with them and show them the data, work through that, and since then we've seen great, again, revenue increase in our, oops, something happened to the computer, with our dairy department. Okay. So anyways, those are some recent examples of how we've been able to increase our revenue, and this is happening all the time. These are just three recent examples. So here's Wesco. So Wesco started out with a program back in July of 2016. And what we did is we took one district, like one 10-store district, and we piloted that district, and that was the first 6 months, you see there, July through January. And then we said, you know, this is working for us. So then what we decided to do is also include our other 4 districts. And with that, you can see starting in the month of February, you can see a nice, the graph, you can see a nice lift in revenue gain. So for us, we really saw it working. We decided to engage all districts in February. And then after the first year for us, that brought our merchandise sales, increased our merchandise sales by $1.2 million. So again, for a chain our size, a $1.2 million lift in merchandise sales, really in a 6-month period, was a pretty good lift for us, and a very quick ROI. So we were real excited about that. So from there, I want to take a minute and talk about this slide. This slide's interesting. This slide here represents several different things. I'll start out right here where it says store, and then the 100% implementation. So with this area here, what this is when the recommendations come through to the stores, how well we're doing each week on implementing those recommendations, reviewing and responding to those recommendations. So for us, for 18 months, we've missed 0. We've been 100% all the time. But again, that's the importance of the ease of the program and the importance of the engagement level at the store level. So that's been pretty exciting for us. This 40% represents something called hit rate. So what do we mean by hit rate? What we mean by all these recommendations come by, how many of them really make a difference? So for us, 40% of everything that comes through to us, we're able to take an actionable step and find something with that recommendation that is helping us increase our revenue. So 40% of the time, that's something that we find that helps us improve our revenue. Now, I talked about that $1.2 million. That was the actual sales percent lift for us, the 1.6 that we saw as a company. So the $1.2 million gave us about a 1.6 lift in merchandise sales for that first 12-month period, which is exciting. You know, we try a lot of different initiatives as business, you know, retailers, and to find something that gives you a lift like that is very healthy. Okay, so then on this chart at the bottom here about their sales increase, so this 47% represents when we find an item that we make a change to. Again, maybe it was out of stock, maybe it was visibility not being priced. We find something, the 47% represents the lift that we got overall with those items. Now, those same items that in other stores that we did not find an opportunity with, we had a 1% lift. So you can see there's a real jump from finding something to just stagnant, not finding anything. So that's real exciting, and that shows us over and over again the value of operational excellence. Okay, so we're going to conclude with this slide here. So what we have here is we have overall, this is showing us the CB4 program is giving customers anywhere from a 0.8 to a 3% lift and same sales growth. Wesco, being now we're in our second year, we're expecting a lift of $2.1 million. So again, exciting for us from the first time around 1.2 to this time 2.1. So that's really exciting for us as a company, which is going to be about a 2% lift overall in our merchandise sales. From there, improved availability. So again, this is all, this is really what it's about. We want to make sure that our stores on a regular basis have the products at the right place at the right time for our customers, because again, you can't sell it if you don't have it, and this is really a great operational resource that helps us, again, be successful with having the products at the right place at the right time. And really it comes down to customer experience. I mean, we all want to make sure that when our customers come in, that they are able to, find the products that they want, in the right place at the right time, and that gives them, a good experience. And again, as I mentioned earlier, treasure hunt is really something too that our stores have really coined when it comes to the fun of the process. And then the last thing here is the dynamic local assortment. And really what that comes down to is again, finding items in our stores, in our chain, that we don't have in certain stores where we're finding they're selling really well. And again, CB4 brings that up, and it basically encourages us to take a look to see if we should add those items into our assortment. And what's kind of fun about it too is you can actually change the parameters, so you can set like a certain dollar level. If the potential reaches a certain dollar level, that's when the recommendations will pop up. So it's kind of a fun thing to play around with and learn from. And I think at this point in time, that is going to take us to questions and answers. Thank you.
So at this time, my colleague Hannah Lieberman will be walking around with a microphone. If anybody has questions for Irad or for Joe, we'd be happy to have them come up and answer. Looks like at this time we've got about 11 minutes, so maybe 5 or 6 questions. Please raise your hand if you have a question, and Hannah will come over to you.
Hello. Yeah, so I have a question about the frequency of the data upload. You say you do it every week, so that gives you more kind of. It seems that you're detecting things on a pretty low frequency. What do you have experiences doing it on a more kind of real time type of operation?
Yes. So there is always a trade-off, by the way. The short answer is yes. We can do it on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. The interesting fact is that those patterns are time dependent. So sometimes we have the same customer running it in different time windows, and you see different patterns. There is also a cost if you do it on very high frequency. You'll get a lot of noise. Part of the fact that you do it on a weekly or a bi-weekly level is actually providing you some kind of filtering against those noise and events that are more visible in more frequent data. Any other question, guys? For me or for Joe? Okay, great. So, there is a gentleman over there.
Thank you.
Again, by the way, till we have the question, if you need to, if you want to ask in more details, okay, and raise a specific, more a problem that is related to your organization, we are at booth 2346, I believe, and I'll be there most of the day. Some other guys as well, so you are most welcome to visit us.
Thank you. Can you actually hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I have a question about, do you face any challenges with the bias in the algorithm? Like, it's been said there are 2 types of biases. The one is because people invent the algorithm, and the second one is coming from the data. Do you face any of that challenge at all? Thank you.
Yes, we face all the time. I think that everybody that actually does analytics in action, in real life, faces those two biases. So the one that comes with the data is very serious. In a sense, when you get a lot of data and you provide some slim opportunity for random patterns, you can get a lot of recommendations that are just random. So we find those recommendations by various type of filtering and statistical tests. The other part of the bias, the human bias, it's a very interesting thing because rarely, when you have a very significant use case, in many cases, people will come up with a story. Sometimes it is true, sometimes it is not, to explain, to try and explain something that is actually can be seen very clearly in the data. And we were surprised sometimes that we really were able, by taking other pieces of data set, to see that those stories are true. But in other cases, I think that even though those are type of stories that we try and as human to fill those holes, it has a very important role. It provides some kind of a unique goal, regardless of the story, to try and find out how you can leverage, how you can tackle these problems. And in this sense, I think that analytics plays a very important role of actually taking all the people, allowing them to see the data and focusing them on a very clear outcome. And this is something that people don't talk about it, but the storytelling about analytics is a lot of value. And I will tell you even more than that. We are actually now trying to take these analytics outcome and make it sort of a game, a gamification, so people can really have fun in this game of analytics and can actually reach their goals through this tool. So this is about bias. Any other questions?
Hello. Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah.
You mentioned, Joe, that you have had a 1.2 million uplift in sales in that first month. The first 6 months of using. How much does it actually cost you to use this service? What's the return on investment?
You know, I did do the ROI analysis a couple times on it. You know, specifically, I don't have like an ROI number I can give you, but I can tell you that it took less than 3 months for us to actually see a positive ROI. Is that helpful? Yes. Thank you. Any additional questions out there?
I would just add and say that anyone that does analytics and work on ROI understands very well that it should always be a win-win game. It cannot be otherwise, specifically with the SaaS process. SaaS process is based on a common belief of both parties that the tool can be valuable. Yes, sure.
Thanks. I'd just be curious for the Wesco, maybe specifically or just in general, how much data do you need to feed into it? Like how many different fields beyond just like when you say POS data, so that's like characteristics of the SKU, the time of day, but I mean, do you know, for example, where the SKU was merchandised in the store? Do you know anything about the customer, et cetera? Like how much do you need to feed it to get the recommendations?
So what we're doing is we're simply just taking our POS data that is ring through the POS on an ongoing basis during a weekly period, and with that, you really don't need anything more specific than that. You simply just need to have the POS data, and then keeping in mind that this data is being analyzed as a chain, so all of our locations are being analyzed, and then what happens is when we start seeing anomalies, that's when the CB4 program says, hey, at store X, Y, or Z, there's something different at this store, and there's a pattern going on in your company where you're selling certain items at a high level, but at these stores you're not, and so that's really how the system helps us understand, what areas to look at. Again, often it's something as simple as just not having the product available, visibility, it could be a vendor opportunity. So it's really just, you just take your POS data, you share it with CB4, they do their data crunching on it, and it comes back, and it's like, it's quite amazing, because again, I've gone out in the stores myself and done this with store managers, and they'll be like, I don't get it, and I'll say, well look, you can't see the product, there's something in front of it. And so again, it's something that's real transparent when you go out and look at it.
So I will add one thing. I mean, you start with POS data, very simple aggregated data, how much you sell per each product in each store. And since it's a pattern detection engine that doesn't, in fact, cares what type of data you provide, you can always enrich the data. You can provide promotion, you can provide pricing, you can provide inventories, and they will be analyzed along with the POS data. But the nice thing, as I mentioned, the goal was to just take a POS and be able to provide insights based on that data set. Okay, any other questions? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here, and we appreciate your time, and please feel free to come and ask more questions if you want.